Aileen Wuornos. Charlize Theron's transformation into Aileen Wuornos in Monster was the moment her career catapulted into legendary status. Before this role, Theron was known largely for her beauty and glamorous screen presence, a perception she despised. By the early 2000s, she had endured a series of box office disappointments and feared being trapped in the white-hot Venus persona that Vanity Fair had famously pinned on her. Producing and starring in Monster was her way of burning that image to the ground and rebuilding her reputation on pure talent. Taking on Wuornos, a homeless sex worker and convicted serial killer, was not only an artistic risk but a full-scale rebellion against Hollywood's typecasting machine. Theron's preparation was radical and methodical. She immersed herself in Wuornos' life by studying over a decade of letters Wuornos wrote from death row, which provided unfiltered access to her emotions and worldview. Theron and director Patty Jenkins visited Florida to walk the same streets Wuornos had walked and speak with those who knew her. The physical transformation was equally intense. Theron gained 30 pounds by abandoning exercise and eating calorie-dense foods like Krispy Kreme donuts, not to look fat, but to build a body that felt shaped by years of hardship. Makeup artist Tonya G recreated Wuornos' sun-damaged skin with translucent paint layers, shaved her eyebrows, and fitted her with prosthetic teeth that altered her speech pattern. Theron even adjusted her posture to reflect the defensive stance of a woman who had lived in constant fight-or-flight mode. This total embodiment paid off in the film's most haunting moments. The opening sequence, where Wuornos contemplates suicide under a highway overpass before meeting Selby, sets the tone for a tragedy rather than a simple crime story. In the murder scenes, Theron captures Wuornos' volatility and terror with equal measure, making the audience feel both the horror of her crimes and the pain of her existence. One of the most unforgettable moments comes during her courtroom breakdown. Theron channels a mix of rage, confusion, and resignation that is as devastating as it is humanizing. When Monster premiered, the reaction was seismic. Critics hailed her work as one of the greatest performances in cinema history, with Roger Ebert writing that it wasn't a performance but an embodiment. Theron swept nearly every major acting award, including the Academy Award for Best Actress, and permanently silenced any doubts about her dramatic range. Vivian Ward. Julia Roberts' turn as Vivian Ward in Pretty Woman was the role that crowned her as America's sweetheart and instantly made her a global superstar. Before this film, Roberts had already gained attention with Mystic Pizza and earned an Academy Award nomination for Steel Magnolias. She was seen as a rising star, but not yet a household name. By the time Pretty Woman was cast, she was a 21-year-old actress on the verge of breaking through, known for her warmth, megawatt smile, and screen presence. This film took those qualities and fused them into a character who would become one of the most iconic romantic leads in cinema history. Vivian Ward is a clever reinvention of the classic hooker with a heart of gold archetype. Rather than portraying Vivian as a passive damsel, the script and Roberts' performance give her agency and sharp wit. Vivian operates without a pimp, negotiates her own terms, and refuses to be humiliated. Her journey is less about being saved and more about rediscovering her self-worth. Her relationship with Edward Lewis, played by Richard Gere, starts as a purely transactional business deal. He is a corporate raider who dismantles companies. She is a sex worker selling her time. That shared transactional footing makes the later romance believable because it grows out of mutual respect rather than a simple rescue fantasy. Roberts prepared for the role by spending time with real-life sex workers on Hollywood Boulevard, arranged through director Gary Marshall's wife. What was meant to be a short conversation turned into Roberts spontaneously taking them for a drive around Los Angeles, a bold move that surprised the production team but gave her insight into her character's world. Despite this preparation, Roberts experienced intense anxiety during filming and relied on the crew to help her relax on set. Several now legendary moments in the film were unscripted and owe their charm to Roberts' natural spontaneity. The jewelry box snap scene was a prank by Gary Marshall, meant to jolt Roberts awake on a sleepy day of filming. Her burst of laughter was so genuine that it became the film's most iconic image. Another unforgettable moment is the piano scene, where Gere's real-life musical improvisation created an intimate vulnerability that deepened the romance. When Pretty Woman was released, it became a box office juggernaut, grossing over $463 million worldwide and holding the record for the most tickets sold for a romantic comedy. Roberts won the Golden Globe for Best Actress and earned her second Oscar nomination. The role didn't just make her famous, it solidified her as the face of a new era of romantic comedies and cemented her status as Hollywood royalty. Amy Dunne. Rosamund Pike's portrayal of Amy Dunne in Gone Girl was a career-redefining explosion that transformed her from a respected supporting actress into a commanding leading presence. Before this film, Pike had built a reputation as the consummate English rose. She was elegant, intelligent, and often cast as refined women in period dramas like Pride and Prejudice and thrillers like Jack Reacher. She was admired but had not yet anchored a major Hollywood film. Playing Amy was a complete reinvention, a role that detonated her public image and showcased a capacity for menace and psychological complexity few knew she possessed. Amy Dunne is one of modern cinema's most intricately crafted sociopaths. Raised in the shadow of Amazing Amy, the fictionalized version of herself created by her parents for a best-selling children's book series, Amy grows into an adult with perfectionist tendencies, simmering resentment, and a pathological need for control. Her breaking point comes when she discovers that her husband, Nick, has betrayed her with a younger woman. In response, she stages her own murder, frames him for it, plants an incriminating diary, and meticulously orchestrates her disappearance. The film's cool girl monologue became an instant cultural touchstone, articulating the exhausting performance women are expected to give in relationships. The perfect partner who loves what he loves, never complains, and never challenges him. Pike delivers the monologue with icy precision, making Amy's rage feel both terrifying and disturbingly justified. To capture Amy's duality, Pike underwent an intense preparation process, guided by director David Fincher. She mastered a flawless American accent and created separate voices for Diary Amy and the real Amy, ensuring the audience could hear the shift between her false persona and her true nature. Physically, she was asked to gain and lose weight 3 separate times during the shoot to reflect Amy's changing states of captivity and control. Pike even practiced slitting a pig carcass with a box cutter to authentically portray the film's brutal climax, in which Amy murders Desi Collings to secure her triumphant return home. Gone Girl became a cultural phenomenon, and Pike's performance was hailed as electrifying and chillingly precise. Critics praised her ability to keep the audience both repelled and enthralled, cementing Amy as one of the most memorable villains of the decade. Pike received her first Academy Award nomination along with Golden Globe, SAG, and BAFTA nods, and the role permanently shifted her career trajectory, opening doors to a string of morally complex leading roles. Ellen Ripley. Sigourney Weaver's return as Ellen Ripley in Aliens marked a historic moment in cinema. It not only cemented Ripley as one of the greatest action heroes of all time, but also earned Weaver an Academy Award nomination, a nearly unheard-of honor for a science fiction performance. Weaver had first introduced audiences to Ripley in 1979's Alien, where she was the unexpected survivor in a tense, claustrophobic horror story. In the years that followed, Weaver deliberately avoided typecasting, proving her range with films like The Year of Living Dangerously and Ghostbusters. When James Cameron's script for Aliens arrived, it deepened Ripley's character and gave Weaver the opportunity to explore her trauma and resilience in a way that elevated the sequel far beyond a simple monster movie. Ripley's arc in Aliens is one of loss, transformation, and empowerment. After surviving the Nostromo incident, Ripley wakes from 57 years of cryosleep to discover that her young daughter has died of old age. This devastating revelation fuels her emotional core, turning her eventual bond with Newt, the colony's lone child survivor, into the heart of the film. Ripley evolves from a lone survivor into a surrogate mother willing to risk everything to protect Newt. This shift reframes the conflict. The climactic battle with the alien queen becomes a primal confrontation between two mothers fighting for their young. The moment Ripley straps into the power loader and delivers the immortal line, "Get away from her, you bitch," is a defining cinematic image, transforming her from a horror survivor into a full-fledged action icon. Preparing for the role demanded both physical and psychological commitment. Weaver underwent weapons training alongside the Colonial Marine cast, despite her admitted fear of guns, making her convincing use of the pulse rifle and flamethrower an acting accomplishment in itself. She collaborated closely with Cameron to refine Ripley's dialogue and emotional beats, advocating for choices that would stay true to the character's trauma and strength. At one point, she even suggested Ripley's death as a dramatic conclusion, a request that was ultimately denied but showed her deep investment in the character's integrity. The critical and cultural impact of Aliens was immediate. Weaver's Oscar nomination for Best Actress was a breakthrough for the genre, proving that science fiction could deliver performances worthy of serious recognition. Minny Jackson. Octavia Spencer's portrayal of Minny Jackson in The Help was the performance that launched her from a seasoned but largely unrecognized character actress into an Academy Award-winning star. Before this film, Spencer had spent years in supporting roles, often cast as nurses, clerks, or comedic side characters, with little chance to showcase her dramatic range. Her friendship with author Catherine Stockett positioned her perfectly for the role. Stockett even admitted that she wrote Minny with Spencer's voice in mind. When the film adaptation was greenlit, Spencer was the clear choice, and her performance became the film's beating heart. Minny Jackson is introduced as a tough, sharp-tongued maid working in 1960s Mississippi who refuses to tolerate abuse, even at great personal risk. She is fired by her white employer, Hilly Holbrook, after using the family's indoor bathroom during a storm, a decision that leads to Minnie's unforgettable act of revenge, the now famous terrible awful pie scene. This moment is both darkly comic and deeply subversive, allowing Minnie to reclaim her dignity in a system designed to strip it away. Beyond the humor, Spencer imbues Minnie with layers of vulnerability, particularly in the scenes that explore her abusive marriage and her struggle to provide for her children. Spencer's preparation involved mastering the Mississippi Delta accent of the early 1960s, grounding the character in historical authenticity. Her personal connection to the material added emotional weight. Spencer has spoken about drawing inspiration from the lives of domestic workers she knew growing up in Alabama. On set, she brought an energy that balanced levity with gravitas, ensuring Minny was never reduced to comic relief. The kitchen scenes between Minny and Celia Foote, played by Jessica Chastain, are particularly memorable. Spencer's chemistry with Chastain transforms what could have been a simple employer-employee dynamic into one of the film's most tender and redemptive friendships. Minnie's journey builds to a powerful climax when she bravely contributes her story to Skeeter's book, risking violent retaliation but ultimately helping expose the systemic racism of the era. Spencer's delivery in these moments earned widespread acclaim for its emotional precision and raw honesty. When The Help was released, it became a box office and awards season success. Spencer's performance won her nearly every major supporting actress award, including the Academy Award, Golden Globe, and SAG Award. This role did more than win her trophies. It changed the trajectory of her career, establishing her as a powerhouse capable of anchoring dramatic and socially resonant stories. Sarah Tobias. While Jodie Foster's performance as Clarice Starling in The Silence of the Lambs is certainly legendary and iconic, it was her performance as Sarah Tobias in The Accused that marked a dramatic turning point in her career. It took her from former child star to one of the most respected dramatic actresses of her generation. By the late 1980s, Foster was transitioning out of the shadow of her early fame from films like Taxi Driver and Freaky Friday. She was determined to prove she could handle adult, challenging material, and The Accused offered her the opportunity to do so with unflinching honesty. The film confronted a subject rarely portrayed on screen at the time: gang rape and the legal and social battles that follow. Sarah Tobias is introduced as a working-class young woman who is brutally assaulted by multiple men in a bar while a crowd watches and cheers. The film does not shy away from the horror of the attack, presenting it in a raw, harrowing sequence that was difficult for both audiences and the cast to endure. Foster committed fully to the emotional and physical demands of the role, immersing herself in Sarah's trauma. She explored the psychology of a survivor whose reputation, clothing, and behavior are placed on trial alongside her attackers. The character is written as imperfect. Sarah is brash, drinks heavily, and is unapologetically sexual. Foster refused to soften these edges, choosing to portray her as a complex, flawed human being rather than a sanitized victim. One of the film's most powerful sequences comes in the courtroom, where Sarah listens as her own credibility is dissected. Foster's ability to convey Sarah's fear, anger, and eventual empowerment through small gestures and piercing expressions is what elevates the performance. In the climactic scene, when the jury convicts not just the rapists but also the men who encouraged the assault, Sarah achieves a measure of justice that feels both triumphant and bittersweet. Foster has revealed that filming the attack scene was so emotionally draining that she refused to rehearse it extensively, choosing instead to experience the moment as viscerally as possible during the actual shoot. This decision lent the scene a raw authenticity that made it one of the most unforgettable moments in courtroom drama history. The Accused was a critical success and earned Foster her first Academy Award for Best Actress. The win announced her arrival as a serious adult performer and opened the door to a string of challenging roles, including the aforementioned Clarice Starling in The Silence of the Lambs. Tammy Faye Bakker. Jessica Chastain's portrayal of Tammy Faye Bakker in The Eyes of Tammy Faye was the culmination of a decade-long passion project and the role that won her the Academy Award for Best Actress. Chastain first became interested in Bakker after seeing the 2000 Tammy Faye documentary and was captivated by her combination of flamboyance, resilience, and unshakable faith. Determined to tell Tammy Faye's story in a way that emphasized her humanity rather than mockery, Chastain acquired the rights to the documentary and produced the film through her own company, ensuring creative control over the project. Portraying Tammy Faye required Chastain to undergo one of the most extensive physical transformations of her career. She wore layers of facial prosthetics to capture Bakker's famously animated expressions and underwent a makeup process that sometimes lasted over 4 hours per day. Chastain also committed to a vocal metamorphosis, spending months with a dialect coach to perfect Tammy Faye's high-pitched Midwestern accent and distinctive speaking rhythm. She even trained to sing in Tammy Faye's vocal style, performing the film's musical numbers herself to lend authenticity to the role. The film explores Tammy Faye's journey from a wide-eyed young woman raised in a strict Pentecostal household to an international televangelist and eventual outcast following the PTL scandal that destroyed her husband Jim Bakker's empire. Chastain captures Tammy Faye's signature optimism and refusal to be shamed, particularly in the film's most moving scenes, such as when she comforts a gay man dying of AIDS on live television, a moment that was groundbreaking for conservative Christian broadcasting in the 1980s. Her portrayal avoids caricature by showing both Tammy Faye's vulnerability and her sometimes naive complicity in her husband's empire, presenting a portrait of a woman who believed she was serving God even as the world around her crumbled. Chastain has spoken about the emotional toll the role took on her, describing how wearing heavy prosthetics and makeup for months left her physically exhausted. However, the effort paid off. Critics praised her performance as both transformative and deeply empathetic, noting that she turned what could have been a tabloid spectacle into a nuanced character study. When the film premiered, Chastain's work was immediately singled out as awards-worthy. She went on to win the Academy Award, Screen Actors Guild Award, and Critics' Choice Award for Best Actress. This role not only showcased her range and dedication, but also solidified her reputation as one of the finest actresses of her generation, willing to push herself physically and emotionally for a story she believed in. Norma Ray Webster. Sally Field's performance as Norma Ray Webster in Norma Ray was the defining moment that shattered her Gidget and Flying Nun television image and established her as one of the most serious, non-comedic actresses of her generation. Before this film, Field had struggled to break free from typecasting, despite already proving her dramatic chops with her Emmy-winning performance in the made-for-TV film Sybil. Norma Ray gave her the perfect role to complete that transition, a blue-collar Southern textile worker who becomes an unlikely labor activist. Norma Ray is a woman who works long hours in a noisy, oppressive textile mill under dangerous conditions. The character is based on Crystal Lee Sutton, a real-life union organizer whose efforts led to major improvements in labor rights for textile workers. To prepare for the role, Field spent 2 weeks working in an active textile mill, learning to operate machinery and immersing herself in the grueling environment her character endures. This preparation allowed her to move naturally within the factory setting, grounding the performance in realism. The film charts Norma Ray's transformation from a disaffected single mother into a passionate leader who risks her job, reputation, and personal relationships to fight for unionization. Field captures every step of this evolution, from Norma Ray's initial skepticism to her dawning realization that collective action is the only way to achieve justice. One of the most iconic moments in the film, and in American cinema, is the scene in which Norma Ray stands on a table in the factory, holding up a cardboard sign that simply reads, "Union." Field's posture, her steady hands, and the silent solidarity that follows make the moment electrifying. It is an image of courage and defiance that is endured as a symbol of grassroots activism. Field's portrayal is not idealized. She allows Norma Ray to be tough, stubborn, and sometimes abrasive, making her victory feel earned rather than sentimental. Her Southern accent and physicality add another layer of authenticity, reminding viewers that this is a working-class woman who finds her voice through hard-won struggle. Upon release, Norma Ray was both a critical and commercial success. Field's performance was universally praised and earned her the Academy Award for Best Actress, along with honors from Cannes and the New York Film Critics Circle. This role permanently redefined her career, allowing her to pursue more complex and dramatic characters in films like Places in the Heart and Steel Magnolias. Tonya Harding. Margot Robbie's portrayal of Tonya Harding in I, Tonya, was the performance that cemented her status as a serious dramatic actress and a powerhouse producer. Before this role, Robbie was best known for glamorous and edgy parts like Naomi LaPaglia in The Wolf of Wall Street and Harley Quinn in Suicide Squad. Taking on Harding, one of the most controversial figures in American sports history, was a bold choice that allowed Robbie to explore vulnerability, rage, and dark humor all in one performance. Importantly, Robbie produced the film through her own company, Lucky Chap Entertainment, demonstrating her commitment to telling Harding's story in a way that challenged the public's tabloid-fueled perception of her. Harding's story is a complex mix of triumph and tragedy. Born into poverty and trained as a figure skater from a very young age, she became the first American woman to land a triple axel in competition, a feat that should have made her a national hero. Instead, her reputation was forever tainted by the 1994 attack on rival skater Nancy Kerrigan, which was orchestrated by Harding's ex-husband Jeff Gillooly and associates. Robbie's performance refuses to paint Harding as a one-dimensional villain or victim. Instead, she captures her as a fiercely talented, deeply flawed woman shaped by relentless abuse from her mother and a desperate need for acceptance. Robbie underwent months of intensive ice skating training to perform many of Harding's skating sequences herself. Prosthetics were used to subtly alter her face, helping her physically resemble Harding and enhancing the sense of transformation. She also worked on perfecting Harding's distinctive Pacific Northwest accent and physical mannerisms, from her hunched skating posture to her explosive temper. Some of the film's most powerful moments come during its mockumentary-style interviews, where Robbie breaks the fourth wall and speaks directly to the camera. In these scenes, she delivers Harding's pain and anger with biting humor, forcing the audience to reckon with how complicit the media and public were in Harding's downfall. The recreation of the Kerrigan attack aftermath and Harding's emotional courtroom sentencing scene stand out as devastating highlights, with Robbie balancing heartbreak and defiance. I, Tonya, was a critical and awards-season success, earning Robbie her first Academy Award nomination for Best Actress and solidifying her reputation as a formidable dramatic performer. The film also recontextualized Harding in the cultural imagination, turning her from a late-night punchline into a tragic antihero. Robbie's fearless portrayal was the key to that reappraisal and remains one of the defining performances of her career. Queen Elizabeth I. Cate Blanchett's portrayal of Queen Elizabeth I in Elizabeth was the performance that announced her as one of the most formidable actresses of her generation. Before this film, Blanchett was a rising star, primarily known in Australia, with a few international credits like Oscar and Lucinda. Elizabeth was her breakout moment, a role that required her to chart the transformation of a young, inexperienced princess into one of the most powerful monarchs in history. The film's success elevated her from a promising newcomer to a global name, earning her a Golden Globe and a BAFTA and launching her into the ranks of Hollywood's most respected performers. Elizabeth begins the story as a vulnerable, politically naive young woman who is suddenly thrust onto the throne after the death of her half-sister, Queen Mary I. Blanchett plays her early uncertainty with a blend of innocence and curiosity, allowing the audience to feel the weight of Elizabeth's sudden responsibility. Over the course of the film, Elizabeth undergoes a profound transformation as she navigates treacherous political plots, assassination attempts, and pressure to marry in order to secure her rule. Blanchett captures this evolution with precision. Her performance shifts from softness to steel, culminating in the unforgettable final scene where she appears with a shaved hairline, ghostly white makeup, and a hardened resolve, declaring herself married to England. To prepare for the role, Blanchett studied Elizabeth's personal letters and historical documents, immersing herself in the Queen's inner life. Physically, she endured the discomfort of heavy period costumes and adopted Elizabeth's formal bearing, which required her to move with regal restraint. Her voice work was equally meticulous, projecting authority while revealing flashes of vulnerability in private moments. This careful attention to detail made her performance feel lived in rather than theatrical, grounding the historical epic in emotional reality. The film's most iconic moments include Elizabeth's fiery confrontation with her advisors, where Blanchett commands the screen with righteous fury, and the climactic Virgin Queen transformation sequence, where she strips away her personal identity to fully embody the monarch. These scenes have become synonymous with Blanchett's career, and are often cited as defining examples of her range and power. When Elizabeth premiered, critics hailed Blanchett's performance as a revelation, comparing her to greats like Meryl Streep. She won the Golden Globe and BAFTA for Best Actress, and earned her first Academy Award nomination, setting the stage for a career filled with daring choices and powerhouse performances. If you liked this video, you'll love where I go next. So click the video on your screen and find out.